What took place in the middle of the Pacific Ocean remains difficult to understand. The Navy got reports about a huge object that might be sitting on the sea floor. No one knew what they would find, so everyone was shocked when an enormous old airplane was lifted out of the ocean. But this was only the start. When they examined what was inside, things became even more incredible. The Navy showed up at the location with a massive crane ship. It was a special vessel they rarely needed to use, but sources said this situation was extraordinary. Reports had come from a cruise ship that traveled through this area of the ocean just a few days earlier. Their radar equipment had detected a giant mysterious object lying on the ocean bottom. The calls about this discovery were fascinating, but the Navy needed evidence before they could take action, their time, and, more importantly, their expensive crane equipment were costly resources. This equipment stayed in storage and was only brought out for critical missions. However, when the naval commander examined the image provided by the cruise ship's radar, he immediately ordered his team and equipment into action. Following a 2-hour journey, the crew and their crane arrived at the location where the object had been spotted. Everyone stayed focused and prepared as the crane's heavy cables were sent down into the deep ocean, along with a diving robot. Everyone aboard the ship watched the screens that showed the camera feed. So when the robot revealed the image of a large aircraft on the ocean floor, surprised gasps could be heard everywhere. The diving team immediately began using specialized archaeological tools to carefully sift through the ocean floor sediments. Knowing that every piece of evidence could be crucial, no one had expected this result. Even the ship's captain remained speechless. The aircraft was enormous. How had it ended up down there? And what might be found inside it? The Navy diving robot attached the cables to strong points on the aircraft, and then the crane system on the ship took over the job. The cables were pulled back with the handle, and the aircraft began rising upward. It wasn't simple work. The aircraft was much bigger than the naval crew had first thought, and with each inch it rose, the crane made groaning and creaking sounds. After roughly 30 minutes of constant pulling and mechanical noise, the crane finally brought the aircraft to the surface. Each dive had lasted about an hour, and it had taken multiple dives to fill the recovery baskets, but their persistence was finally paying off. When the divers surfaced, they used the ship's decompression chamber, a critical safety measure after working at such depths. Everyone on the ship could see that the aircraft had been underwater for many years, and it wasn't just the old-fashioned design that showed its age. The entire body was eaten away by rust in thick layers, hiding any markings that might be visible. This created a problem because they needed to identify it before writing reports or checking it against records of missing aircraft. We have to learn everything we can about this aircraft, the Navy captain told his crew. That means there's only one option left for us right now. With the wings now visible and the body fairly stable, someone had to go inside to investigate. The wings created a safe walkway. So he continued, looking at the group. Who wants to volunteer for this job? Being curious wasn't the problem. Everyone around the captain wanted answers, but the fear of what they might discover inside the wreck made them hesitate. Nobody stepped forward right away, and the silence became tense, so they had to draw straws to make the decision. The reason for picking 2 people was simple. They needed answers fast, and having 2 sets of eyes would be helpful. But since the aircraft was still hanging and unstable, safety rules limited them to only 2 people at once. After a quick draw, it was decided that Marcus from the deck crew and Jonathan Carter would be the ones to explore the inside of the wreckage. With encouragement from their teammates above, the 2 men carefully went down the ship's side, using a narrow metal ladder. With their hearts beating fast and their hands slightly trembling, Marcus and Jonathan Carter dropped the last meter and landed gently but firmly on the surface of the aircraft's worn metal wing. After they landed, Marcus and Jonathan Carter signaled that they were safe and communicated the same through their walkie-talkie. Constant communication was essential, not only to share what they found, but also to ensure safety. If something went wrong, help had to arrive quickly. With that confirmed, the two men steadied themselves and walked carefully across the large metal wing toward the main part of the mysterious aircraft. The aircraft was missing all of its windows, so getting inside wasn't difficult. They picked the center opening to enter. Marcus gave Jonathan Carter a boost up and then pulled himself through right after. Rows of passenger seats were still there, each one marked with its own seat number. This was a passenger aircraft, Marcus reported over the walkie-talkie. Just moments later, they discovered something even more important. On one of the seats, a rusty serial number can still be read. UN 970, Jonathan Carter said. His voice carried a mixture of excitement and dread. Knowing that this serial number would need to be cross-referenced with military databases, a process that could take months for complete identification, Jonathan Carter looked surprised and turned to Marcus. "What on earth happened here?" he asked, his voice filled with confusion and tension. Marcus shrugged and continued with the search, hoping that something left inside might provide crucial answers. After searching most of the cabin without finding anything useful, the two men turned toward the only area they hadn't checked, the pilot's cockpit. It was also the only part with a door. "Are you ready to pull?" Marcus asked. Jonathan Carter nodded firmly. Marcus had already attempted to open the cockpit door using the rusty handle, but a gentle tug had no effect. It was completely stuck shut. The two men leaned against it together, using all their body weight, pulling with strength and determination. Their arms strained until finally a loud metal screech echoed. The door began to give way slowly but steadily. Sorry for the interruption. Before we continue with the story, I kindly ask you to like the video and subscribe to this channel. It is very important for us. Thank you very much. The door opened with a creak, showing what was inside, an old-style pilot's control room that looked like something from a spy movie. Buttons, switches, and blinking dials covered every surface. The inside was surprisingly well preserved despite the wreck's age. Among the analog equipment sat something much more interesting, a rusty metal box. Even though it was sealed shut from years underwater, they forced it open with effort. Inside was a sealed plastic bag, undamaged and protecting a recorder. Marcus and Jonathan Carter looked at each other, then radioed their commanding officer about what they had found. The captain told them to open the bag. To their amazement, the plastic had perfectly protected the recorder. With careful hope, they sealed the bag again and prepared to bring it aboard. If the recorder's information had survived, it could contain valuable information from the past. Back on the ship, the sealed bag was opened carefully, and the recorder was placed on the crew's main table. The captain put in fresh batteries and pressed play. For a moment, only static crackling could be heard. Then a voice came through. It was the pilot of the crashed aircraft. He described a sudden storm they met on May 21st, 1971, which badly damaged one engine. Forced to make an emergency landing, the pilot and passengers survived the crash, but the aircraft was sinking quickly. He told the passengers to use emergency rafts to head toward the nearest island they could see on their navigation system. Before leaving, the pilot recorded their location and sealed the device in the cockpit, hoping someone would eventually discover it. As the recorder reached its end, the room became quiet. The crew understood how significant this was. Without discussion, they entered the coordinates and changed the ship's direction toward the island. During the trip, the crew shared theories. Some feared the passengers had died, while others wondered if they had survived but left no trace. A few, including Marcus and Jonathan Carter, held onto hope. About 20 minutes into the journey, land appeared on the horizon. Excitement filled the team as they reached the island and dropped anchor. The crew stepped onto shore, their boots touching wet sand and then solid ground. The coordinates matched perfectly. In front of them stood a quiet island, still and apparently lifeless, yet clearly the one mentioned in the recording. Despite the quietness, they felt a deeper story was hidden beneath the surface. The crew divided into teams and began searching the land, but the island offered no signs, no footprints, no remains of a camp, no evidence of life. The strange silence continued. Some began to question the mission's purpose. Others kept going, determined to find answers. Even though no immediate evidence appeared, the discovery of the recorder and its message had brought back a decades-old mystery. What happened to the passengers after the landing? Did they ever reach safety? Was this island their final resting place, or had they left before anyone arrived? With the island in sight and the recorder in hand, the crew's journey had changed from a recovery mission to something much greater, a search for truth. And somewhere beyond the silence, it felt like part of the story was still waiting to be discovered. But nature had one more trial in store for them. As they continued their search, the sky darkened ominously, and storm clouds gathered with terrifying speed. The first rumble of thunder echoed across the water, followed by a blinding flash. Then came the lightning, not scattered bolts, but straight, violent strikes that hit the water around them in perfect lines, each one illuminating the churning sea in stark electric white. "Get down!" Someone screamed as another bolt crashed into the ocean just yards from their vessel. The water hissed and steamed where the lightning struck, and for a moment, they thought they might not survive to complete their mission. But the storm passed as suddenly as it had arrived, leaving them shaken but alive. Deeper into the jungle, the crew came across a clearing. Though nature had begun to take it back, the space looked purposely shaped. Marcus pointed to outlines in the ground that looked like a small garden. The others gathered to look, recognizing signs of past human activity. Someone had clearly lived here. Soon more evidence appeared. Pieces of cloth caught in branches, a broken pot, a faint outline of a fire pit. These weren't ancient artifacts, but old enough to confirm long-term survival. Near the clearing, they discovered freshwater wells dug deep into the ground and the remnants of what appeared to be rainwater collection systems. "They made it," Jonathan Carter whispered, "at least for some time." But as they went deeper, the mood changed. The air became thick, and a strange silence took over. Suddenly, shadows moved. People emerged from the trees, quiet, alert, and watching. The crew instinctively raised their hands, trying to appear harmless. The people in front of them, different in age, but all strong and cautious, said nothing. An older woman stepped forward and motioned for them to follow. With no other choice, they obeyed. Through winding paths, they were led to something unexpected: a village. Well-built huts, growing gardens, and fenced animals showed a thriving, self-sufficient community. On the white sand beaches, they could see arrangements of palm fronds that had clearly been used as distress signals over the years. The island was no longer just a place of survival, it had become a home. At the village center stood a large hut. Inside sat an elderly man with white hair and sharp eyes. He looked up and smiled. "You found us?" he said warmly. "I'm the pilot. Did you find my recording?" The crew was amazed. He had waited for decades, holding on to the hope that someone would come. The pilot, now 89, told their story. After the landing, they used life rafts to reach the island. When rescue didn't come, they stopped waiting and started building. They had survived on coconuts and fresh water from natural wells, creating an intricate system of gardens, using seeds they had managed to salvage from the wreckage. Over the years, many of the original passengers passed away, but their children grew up strong, starting families and creating a new life from the island's resources. The children born on this island had never seen the outside world. This place was all they had ever known. The Navy crew offered them a way back to the modern world. The ship had enough space for everyone, but many of the younger generation hesitated. This island was the only world they had ever known. The thought of leaving it was overwhelming, even with the promise of something better. The pilot spoke to them with quiet strength. "We built something strong here," he said, "but the world has more to offer." His words had power. Slowly, the villagers began to accept the idea. One by one, they agreed. Preparations began. Goodbyes were emotional. This island had been everything, but the future was calling. Over 80 people boarded the Navy ship, some crying, others excited. All changed forever. When they returned, the survivors were welcomed warmly. Medical checks confirmed their health, and the government welcomed them, providing homes in a quiet town. Though the new environment felt strange, they adapted quickly, helped by being allowed to stay together. Under the pilot's guidance, they found their way, contributing to the community in farming, construction, and other familiar trades. Though life had changed dramatically, they remained closely connected, bound by shared history. About a year later, the pilot passed away at the age of 90. His death was a deep loss. At his funeral, Marcus, Jonathan Carter, and the Navy crew were surprised by the number of people who came. The man who had led a forgotten people had become loved in this new world. His legacy lived on, not just in memory, but in the strong, united community he had helped build. The island was behind them, but it would never be forgotten. Did you enjoy this story? If you found that aircraft, would you have volunteered to go inside and explore it? Let us know in the comments below. If you liked the story, subscribe to this channel and leave a like. Sometimes the biggest discoveries come from taking the risks that others won't take. Thanks so much for listening. See you in the next video. Have a great day.